Hey guys, Ricardo's here. Coming to you from sort of behind the scenes. A little bit after having completed the actual Chapter 9 that brick walled us at the end of our last stream. Um, Chapter 9 is an unusual beast for Legend difficulty, because with Legend difficulty having no saves, Chapter 9 also having no save points and no save time when you can save means that you have to play the entire chapter in a single successful attempt. Now, as you guys saw, the opening bit with the combat segment is incredibly easy to do on this. However, the second segment, the car chase, causes a significant problem for this kind of thing. And what ended up happening is basically like I would get through the combat section reliably every single time, only to die in the car chase scene because you can't heal or do anything like that. So all in all, this took about 14 attempts to complete successfully. And what you guys are going to see on screen is the gameplay from the 14th attempt. I'm going to talk over that. And what you're quickly going to see is that not only am I racing through things, but especially like in this early bit here, I'm doing things so systematically because everything about going through this section essentially is about maximizing your efficiency and reducing the amount of damage you can take. Efficiency in this opening section is key because the quicker you can get this done, the faster you can get to that car chase scene again. So the first thing we do here is that opening segment you see me equip a weapon, the Marlin Cannon. That'll be useful for the next section of gameplay coming up, not this segment. And then you see me equip Amon's Glasses, which will give us bonus weapon damage, which is really great in this room because there are a ton of swords all over the place. Basically every enemy drops one. And you also see me equip the high-tech blade guards, which, because most of the enemies use blades in this entire segment of gameplay, we want to be able to block all those attacks and be able to build heat and stuff off of them, particularly during the Lao boss fight. Once you have all that done, it's just a matter of running around cleaning out these enemies. Now, the nice thing about having Amon's Glasses is if you pick up one of the broadswords, which you see me do frequently here, most of the Mook enemies will fall within 2 or 3 hits, and that leaves just one enemy per segment that has an elevated health bar, which can usually be taken out in 1 or 2 heat moves, like you see here. There are a couple of gun enemies, or gun-like enemies, one knife thrower, one gun, and another knife thrower in that order will appear. I do recommend taking them out first. In that third phase, there's also a taser enemy, but usually you're going to be able to just mow through them and they won't hit you, but just in case. So in this next segment, we pull out the Marlin Cannon right away, take a shot without ever moving or anything, and that will immediately bring us to the next phase. We can then immediately heat move off of the heat we get from the Marlin Cannon to down one of the 2 mini bosses that get spawned. From there, you're going to try and clean out the enemies. Now, usually I want to pressure left to get the gun guy you see me beating up. However, that's not always going to work out. What the enemies do immediately following that heat move is somewhat random, and since they're allowed to move while you're still doing that heat move, you can get caught off guard with an attack. Beat up enough enemies, you'll move into phase 3. Here, you're going to try and clean out a little bit of the remaining enemies, and you see me do something stupid here, which is go for the broadsword. Not the best to be in melee, since pretty much every enemy you will have left in this segment has some sort of super armor on most of their attacks. So what you actually want to do is probably run to this back corner and grab these shotguns. There are 2 of them sitting there. Each one gets 3 shots, and those will take out the majority of the enemies. If you're unlucky, you may have the mini-boss left at the end of this chunk, which has 2 butcher's knives. He can power armor and dodge a lot of attacks, so you might just have to heat move him down. Moving into the Lao fight, if you have heat going into this, I recommend equipping a melee weapon and popping a heat move right away. Either a melee weapon or just using Dragon Style and using the ranged move there. But if you don't have any heat, then Brawler and Dragon are your two best styles for when he has a weapon equipped, as they can block and regard very easily, building a lot of heat, and they can pressure the weapon enough that you can break the weapon and break his guard without leaving you super vulnerable, which Rush and Beast will often do. I only discovered it in this final attempt that you're seeing. Rush is actually really good for the next phase, which is swords. This opening bit with the staff, once you break the staff, you will have to pressure him down to where the first bits of that orange health bar are showing. Once you do that, he might stay in melee or whatever mode for a little bit, but usually he'll switch right to his twin broadswords. And when he does that, you then gonna switch to whatever style you want. Rush seems to be pretty good for pressuring the broadswords and getting around behind them, since you can't break their guard as easily. He actually breaks your guard more often than you'll break his. Which you'll see here, I struggle a bit to break his guard in this chunk. But once you break his weapons in whichever form, he goes into a melee mode, which for efficiency's sake, I would recommend just going into Dragon and pressuring, and just using Tiger Drop whenever you can, as Tiger Drop will clear out your boss fights very quickly. The thing to be aware of is, unlike a lot of bosses, Lao seems to spam the health regen state that requires a Kiwami move to break it fairly consistently, so I would recommend not using too many heat moves on Lao, unless you're really confident that you're not going to get another recovery phase. You'll actually see me screw that up twice in this chunk, where he'll have some heat left. Or he'll have some health left, I use all my heat, and then I have to basically let him regen health or burn a health drink to stop it. But for the most part, Lao is pretty easy. He should not pose a danger to you if you're running this for yourself. So here's the first one where I actually managed to have just barely enough heat left to make this Kiwami move work. But Lao, when he's in melee, is really easy to pressure, so Dragon, Rush, Brawler, all of those will work. Basically, the only style that's bad for fighting Lao is Beast style, and that's because Lao has a lot of multi-hit combos and a lot of grab attacks, and so he will punish you if you're in Beast, particularly. But I got super efficient at him. This was actually one of my worst attempts on him. I lost a chunk of health bar. There were times where I would beat him in under a minute and lose almost no health. After that, you have 5 cutscenes that you have to skip through before you get back to the car chase. And the car chase segment is a perplexing thing, because you're not actually told all the information you need to succeed up front. You get these descriptions of how you evade things and how you heat-eye things, but the evade is misleading, because you would think you'd want to hit the evade button as the enemy is attacking you. What you actually want to do is hit the evade button a good deal before the enemy attacks you. Basically, right after the circle around them turns red. Because you need to be fully inside the car to evade an attack. And that timing is really tricky. The other big thing is that you aren't actually aiming for headshots or any kind of anatomy-based shots here. You're just aiming to get the center of that targeting circle. And that gives you the critical damage, which will take out most of the basic enemies in a single shot, letting you coast through this for the most part. The other big thing with this is managing the aggro on your enemies effectively. Basically, if you take any kind of meaningful damage in this first segment, you have very limited chances of success once the truck shows up. And the truck is where the other 3 segments of gameplay for the car chase take place. Cars are probably your biggest worry. The drivers take 3 shots before they will die, and they ram your car, dealing damage to both you and the actual vehicle you're in, both of which you need as much health as you can get during those during the truck segments. If you mismanage your aggro and mistime things, basically any car hit on you is all but game over in this early chunk. So you'll see me, I get hit there, and I barely managed to dodge getting Kiryu hit. Kiryu's health is a lot more important than the car's health. The car's health is only really important for the very last section, which is where the truck driver will attempt to ram into your ass end. That you want as much car health as you can get, because unless you're really, really good at the shooting, which is very finicky, you're not going to kill the driver in a single attempted rush, and they will hit you, so you're going to need to duck into the car. And if the car doesn't have much health left, you're going to lose because the car dies. This happened on 2 or 3 runs for me, so it's not easy. During this section, there are cars that will appear with bad guys in them while a rocket launcher guy shoots you. For this section, basically ignore the rocket launcher man and just use the focus on his rockets to keep those away from you, and otherwise you're just taking care of the ads. They shoot really, really fast relative to normal enemies. As you can see, they go red very, very quickly. That's a huge problem, and it will mow through Kiryu's health, so you've got to try and take them out as quickly as possible. But you don't want to use heat on them, because if you avoid the rockets, those are big damage to both you and the car. During the first gameplay segment for the truck that I was kind of talking over, the key thing to do is shoot the middle guy on the truck, as if you kill him, you will immediately trigger the next scene. You don't need to hit anyone else on top of the truck to trigger this scene that we're in right now. Once you've cleared all of the cars that come to attack you while Rocketman is shooting at you, he is a free target. He is the only thing that will show up, so you're home cleared there. The next scene, and by far the hardest scene, is this part, where you have a machine gun guy on the roof of the truck who can deal a ton of damage and aggroes super fast, while 2 bikes with super fast aggro are shooting at you. My recommendation, and I do a terrible job in the gameplay that you're seeing, is use focus to take out the bikes, and then just try and keep the top guy disrupted until all the bikes go away. Once you do that, he's actually really easy to take out because he's relatively static. With a couple of exceptions, the truck doesn't move very much during that segment. Now, this next scene, your health basically doesn't matter, because if you have taken any hits, the truck will kill you in 1 shot. So what you're trying to do is shoot the truck driver so much that he takes his foot off the gas and doesn't charge at you. If he does succeed in charging at you, you need to basically duck into your car with red health, or every time, to avoid the hit. The car can take about 3 hits at full health. You can see there, I actually got super lucky. I had 1 hit, basically, in me, and if I didn't do that gameplay segment perfect, I was going to die. I was actually panicking at the end there and just popping shots off constantly, and so I got really lucky that I actually completed that segment. But your reward is, in my opinion, the best Nishiki cutscene in the game, and I want to talk over that here because I don't think I would be able to adequately get all my thoughts out on stream. And so while I will be showing this again next time I stream, I wanted to talk through it here. So here we have Nishiki basically attending a mini funeral for his sister, and he's about to commit suicide. because he's realized that everything he's done up to this point is pointless. It's not gotten him anywhere. And he's just about resolved that he's going to kill himself when this asshole, who's been tormenting him for the entire game, walks in. And while this is playing, it's important to remember that at the beginning of this game, Nishiki kills Dojima, but he does so sort of on impulse and on accident. It wasn't a truly intentional act, so he's still relatively innocent at this point. The thought of him killing Dojima doesn't really torture him as much as abandoning Kiryu does. And at the end of Yakuza 0, at multiple points in Yakuza 0, Nishiki stops Kiryu from killing someone intentionally, saying that's a line you can't cross, because if you cross it, you'll never go back, and we need to cross that line together. And then here, Nishiki, so fed up and broken by this guy, intentionally, cold-heartedly kills him, and knowingly crosses that line. And in that moment, you get this stark you see Nishiki become a monster. This stark contrast between what he was and what he's decided to become, what he's sort of embraced. He's embraced crossing that line, and mentally he takes the step of, I've already crossed it. Now I can just do it again and again and again. And this scene by itself, even if they added nothing else to the game, except his sister dying and this scene, would make Nishiki's descent entirely believable and so much more tragic, just because we see and understand what happened to Nishiki to make him into the monster he is. He sees no way out. He sees his course as predetermined since he killed Dojima. He's had no other solution, and so he fully embraces that. And I think that's super important. And so I wanted to talk over that scene because I truly appreciate what this scene does for the game. I think it's, if not the best, one of the best new parts of Kiwami. And it really makes this entire game's narrative click that much more. Makes Nishiki as a villain a lot stronger than he used to be. And with that, next stream we'll resume with Chapter 10, and I'll get a chance to sort of talk through my thoughts about what happens in the plot in Chapter 10 and where the game's plot starts to get a little off the rails and a little silly. But I want to thank you guys for putting up with the delay that this Chapter 9 thing took for me and checking out this video if you enjoyed it. Or I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys in the next stream. Thanks a lot.